They have everything.
I would love to go with you there.
Great, it's a date then.
Good. It's a date.
Throughout the first 4 seasons of The Sopranos, Tony was never especially faithful to Carmela. Indeed, he had numerous affairs on her watch, sleeping with many women along the way. Among many others, there were 3 key women Tony had on the side in longer-term affairs behind Carmela's back. First there was Irina, next came Gloria, and finally he had Valentina, a relationship that extended beyond the 4th season. Needless to say, none of these side affair relationships ended particularly well for Tony. Meanwhile, although they were technically separated, Carmela did eventually cheat on Tony later in the series with AJ's guidance counselor, where she used sex as a weapon to try and help that stunad son of hers out. She did not sleep with anyone aside from Tony during those first 4 seasons. She did, however, have several affairs of the heart, seeking something more than what Tony was providing for her. First, there was Monsignor Jughead, a man who loved Carmela's cooking every bit as much as Tony. Then there was Vic Musto, the handyman who did wallpaper work for Carmela. It was also strongly implied that Carmela had a thing for her tennis coach, as evidenced by her visible disappointment when he left his job and was replaced by a young woman who appeared to have sexual designs for Adriana. None of these affairs of the heart ended especially well for Carmela either. Carm ultimately lost interest in Monsignor Jughead when she caught him eating Rosalie's tasty Italian dish, highlighting the point that the Sopranos often used food as a metaphor for love and sex. Musto became frightened of Tony after he and Carm shared a kiss that never amounted to anything, and he ultimately sent his assistant to finish the wallpaper job for obvious reasons. And the tennis coach left, and Carm's heart was never into the lessons as the new coach had the hots for Adriana. Then there was Furio. None of Carmela's other affairs of the heart compared to what she felt for Tony's Italian enforcer, and what he felt for her. We are first introduced to Furio when Tony visits Italy, and we quickly learn a lot about him. Furio is professional, respectful, intelligent, and personable. He is also well respected by those he works for, and he is a man of considerable rank in his own right, where he has a strong knowledge of their working operations. But most importantly, Tony got to see Furio spring into action when a kid setting off firecrackers sounded like an assassination attempt. Furio's unwavering loyalty was on full display, with Furio diving on the boss, willing to take a bullet to protect him. Furio was a man of action, a man whose loyalty to his boss was beyond reproach. Tony liked what he saw, and he worked out an arrangement to have Furio move to the United States to work for him. Furio's charming ways were further displayed at his welcoming party, where Carm seemed to take an immediate liking to him, as did most of the people who got the chance to interact with the newest member of the crew. Tony had already hooked Furio up with a job for immigration purposes, he was a master cheesemaker, and he was now a key new member of Tony's criminal team. In his first big mission, Furio had to rough up the tanning salon owner, which fronted as a brothel. Moltisanti was unable to provide the owner of the establishment with the proper motivation to keep current on his payments. Furio, however, had no such problems driving home the point in no uncertain terms that future collections are to remain current, or else. The wrath of Furio left Tony mighty impressed. Not only did he have a new driver who had shown a stone-cold willingness to sacrifice himself to protect his boss, but he had a new muscle man who could motivate degenerate gamblers and other business associates who shorted them on the bottom line. Furio continued working in the capacity of Tony's driver and muscle, making collections whenever associates became stubborn and were tardy. Furio made arrangements at the hotel for the poker games, and while Furio had the utmost respect for the boss and others who outranked him, he wasn't afraid to tax those beneath him. If Furio wanted $1,000, it was probably in your best interest to give him $1,000. And even if you did, he may well question your sexuality. Furio was also capable in the role of a fixer, where he was skilled at covering up crime scenes. Menial tasks were not beneath Furio, whether it was keeping the car clean while driving Tony or fetching him some food or beverage. Furio took pride in everything he did to help assist Tony. Furio was not a fan of golf, or Columbus for that matter, but when Dr. Kennedy began ignoring poor Junior because of the politics and the bureaucratic racket of the medical industry, Furio helped show the good doctor the error of his ways. When Matouche tried peddling illegal drugs in Adriana's club, Furio had his ass thrown out of the club before showing him the error of his ways. Furio and Tony had a grand old time when they needed to merrily avenge Janice over the Russian gangsters who roughed her up after she stole the leg. Furio took a gunshot when Jackie Jr. robbed the card game, and Tony ensured he was cared for when that doctor prick, who happened to be a prick doctor, fixed him up. Furio was a little clumsy during his recovery, but he remained loyal as ever. And when Artie got rolled and beat up by the French conman, Furio no doubt made that fella see the error of his ways too. Somewhere along the way, Carm was missing the sexual tension of having a man in her life who could provide her with things Tony was unable and unwilling to offer his wife. In that sense, it was only natural that her husband's charming driver would become the newest target of her loving attention. It started simple enough, with Furio being invited inside while waiting for Tony, and when Carm discovered Furio had designs to buy a new home in Nutley, it was game on for Carmela Soprano, who already had an established passion for real estate. From there, waiting for Tony often turned into a playdate of sorts, where the two would share coffee and pastries, and they would show a genuine interest in each other's lives, passions, and dreams, where Furio's first foray into the exciting world of American homeowners became the centerpiece of their romantic journey. Furio was eager to share photos of his new home, and Carmela was delighted to be a part of the excitement. When Furio revealed to Carm that his neighbor was complaining about him wanting to make his garage into a guest house, she upped her game and immediately began investigating the zoning laws, her being an aspiring realtor. Carm is delighted to be invited to the housewarming party, and she is later determined to do whatever it takes to help Furio convert his garage into a guest house. She brings her Stunad son with her to visit Furio on the pretext of getting a look at the job. AJ is an unwitting witness that Carm and Furio don't do anything inappropriate. The housewarming party was a dream come true for Furio and Carmela. The dance they shared was magical, their bodies in perfect rhythm, and their chemistry so hot that no words were needed. Tony is oblivious to the symbolic cuckolding before him, as usual given his narcissism and inability to see anything beyond his own immediate needs and emotions. But Carm and Furio were both feeling the heat in what was perhaps the most romantic moment during the long rich history of the HBO hit series. After Furio lit the flame in Carmela, there can be no doubt she was fantasizing about Furio and his ponytail when Tony climbed on top of her later that night. Carmela then started feeling bad for Furio because he didn't have a special someone in his life. And despite the fact she fantasized about that person being herself, Carm came up with the brilliant idea to set Furio up with one of her friends. Tony advises her to stay out of it, but Carm wasn't having it. Her master plan springs into action when she finds out Adriana and Christopher are bailing on Billy Joel plans. And once her plan is realized, Carm is nothing short of miserable. But not because Furio and his fixed date didn't hit it off. No, quite the contrary. Carmela's jealousy rears its ugly head. And Tony is once again oblivious to his wife's inner roaring jealousy. All of a sudden, there's trouble in paradise. Furio declines an invitation to go inside, and he's stuck looking at the pictures from the housewarming party all by himself. You can hear Furio's inner Def Leppard as he gazes at his beloved Carmela, but he cannot resist the temptation to contact her, and he calls her under the bogus pretext of missing sunglasses, where he is excited to inform her he received the pictures despite the fact his father is ill. Furio returns to Italy after his father's passing, and around this time Carm becomes infuriated when she discovers Tony has been resuming his cheating ways, which prompts her to rob his money hidden with the duck food. While in Italy for his father's funeral, Furio confesses to his uncle that he is in love with the boss's wife. His uncle advises him to stay away, warning him of the potential danger and ensuring him that the only way this could ever happen would be if Furio were to kill Tony. Furio understood. Meanwhile, Carm couldn't contain her disappointment when she was expecting the triumphant return of Furio, and instead she got Benny. But Furio would return, and when he did, he went back to declining invitations inside, seeming to make a real effort to do the right thing like his uncle advised, where he distanced himself from his one true love. He did, however, deliver some novelty gifts, and Carm was mighty disappointed when she discovered there was no gift for her. This remotivated Carmela, and once again, she marched over to Furio's home, bringing along her dim-witted son to bear witness to the supposed innocence of the visit, this time under the guise of helping Furio redecorate. She may not have killed 16 Czechoslovakians, but all of a sudden, Carm was now an interior decorator. Furio then gives Carm her special gift, but it is unclear whether the vinegar was intended for her. Carm then tries rationalizing that it must have meant something, and Ro is amused by Carm's teenage-style crush. Furio is none too happy when he is forced to listen, as Tony begins bitching and moaning about how ungrateful Carmela is. Next time Carm visits, she has no need for AJ, because the contractors are there. But the sexual tension between these two would-be lovers is simply palpable. Later on, Furio looks all fired up as he watches a drunken Tony being unfaithful to his wife. Furio's inner rage is all over his face, and he is so angered he declines an invitation to spend some time with a nice lady. Just like Carm was jealous of Furio and the friend she had set up for Billy Joel, Furio is now jealous that a drunken adulterer like Tony was married to his beloved Carmela. Furio is then presented with the perfect storm scenario to murder Tony. For starters, his rage was in peak form. If he was going to do something, it was now or never with Tony's blatant disrespect and disregard of his wife. Carm deserved better, and Tony was drunk as a skunk, and Furio still had the reputation of a loyal soldier with unwavering dedication. The idea that a drunken, sloppy Tony might slip while urinating too close to the propellers was entirely plausible, but Furio bottled it, and he didn't follow through with his initial move to kill. Carmela and Furio's dreams of making magical Italian love inside his newly finished guest house would never come to be. Furio bolted, abandoning his life in America as he fled back to Italy, with Tony none the wiser to their unfulfilled romance, and Carm never certain as to why he fled, with no knowledge of how close he came to ending Tony's life. Carm is utterly heartbroken when she learns the news that Furio's house was on the market, and Furio was never seen again. And she is more horrified when Tony makes it official, noting that Furio moved back to Italy. But his name would again surface in a pivotal moment when Carm confesses her love of Furio to Tony, which ultimately led to them being separated. For Furio, in some sense he stayed true to his character. He almost crossed the line, but he didn't. In his character-defining moment, Furio seemingly remained loyal to Tony, sparing his life. Whether it was out of fear or commitment, Furio could not go through with what he started. But in reality, Furio did break form by taking half-assed measures, where he betrayed Tony in his heart. Not just with his year-long unfulfilled romance with Carmela behind Tony's back, but also in the defining moment itself, where despite not going through with it, the fact that he started his move was in itself a forbidden betrayal, even if Tony was none the wiser to what the hell was going on. He betrayed Tony by initiating the kill move, but he had already long betrayed Tony by allowing the sexual tensions between him and Carmela to fester in the first place. For Tony and Carmela, all of their infidelity, real or imagined, was predicated on the fact that Tony and Carm had a shallow transactional relationship. Everything about their relationship had an underlying element of quid pro quo. And because of that, Tony was constantly looking to seek sexual gratification elsewhere, and Carm was seeking to have her non-transactional needs met by others. First, it was Monsignor Jughead enjoying a nice home-cooked meal back when Carm was religiously thirsty, dropping to her knees for communion after a nice game of Name That Pope. But Carm broke that off when she saw him eating Rose lasagna, and she realized she needed more than Jughead could provide. Then it was Vic the handyman, elevating things to the next level where not only did Carm share a kiss with him, but things had evolved from spirituality and food to romance and heightened sexual tension. But that all fell apart because Vic was afraid of Tony. And with the tennis coach, we never see the backstory there, but by this point we don't need to. We are shown everything we need to see. And it doesn't exactly take Sherlock Holmes to realize Carm had the hots for him. With Furio, she could have had it all. The spirituality, the company with food and drink, the romance, the sexual tension, the ability to partake in homemaking activities. And most importantly, Furio was a man who would not be afraid of Tony. While the romance itself never culminated, in truth it was undoubtedly the only relationship in the entire series that was inherently predicated on more traditional romantic elements. Most of the sex we see in the show revolves around shallow short-term gratification, with a strong dose of transactionalism and convenience. Furio and Carmela were indeed the only relationship in the show that had any sense of pureness of heart involving both parties. It was the forbidden romance that couldn't be, and it added one of the most interesting and intriguing storylines in the show. The Carm-Furio romance, though it was not to be, should be seen as a contrast with almost every other dalliance of the show, more soap opera than Sopranos. It gives us a window into what Carm probably saw in Tony in the first place, given she was obviously attracted to the danger and potential power. It's almost inconceivable that Carm would have been happy with any of the other potential suitors, given she shares many personality traits with Tony himself. Furio was different, however, because he combined the danger she craved with the tenderness that she never had, an almost high school romance in middle age. We might imagine that Carm herself was capable of fulfilling the promise of a stable, rewarding, long-term relationship. Emphasis on might, given her propensity for manipulation, but Tony never could be. Furio, meanwhile, might have been, and so David Chase and the creators give us a glimpse of potential that could never be realized in this world. If Furio had killed Tony in cold blood, his own character would have been permanently damaged. It was doomed to fail from the beginning in that sense. But that doesn't make it meaningless. It's a classic case of what might have been. Everyone dreams, even characters on as dark a show as The Sopranos. Carm dreams of real love she will never have. Furio did too. Even Tony does, though he is incapable. It's as if this single, unconsummated relationship represents everything these characters will never have. As mentioned earlier, although they were technically separated, Carm would eventually go on to cheat on Tony with AJ's guidance counselor, where she moved on from her romantic ideals and right into another transactional relationship, falling back into her old pattern and closing the door on any potential for true love. She finally made her unfaithful heart cross the line, and when she ultimately did so, she went back to what was familiar. A transactional relationship where she used sex as a weapon, just like she did with Tony. And in doing so, she was able to help try and protect the interests of her deadbeat son. But the guidance counselor was too sharp for her, and he saw right through her, which enraged her and made her go back to what she was most familiar with, being the accomplice wife of a powerful criminal scumbag mob boss, with all of the shallow pettiness that came with the territory. At the end of the day, Tony may have found a way to have Furio whacked. Or maybe not. Sadly, we will never know. What are you gonna do? Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed and have a wonderful night.
I have been dreaming and fantasizing and in love with Furio. Furio, hi. He'll be down in a second. He's just changing. He was working outside this morning. You want some coffee?
Sure.
Every morning when he'd come to pick you up, I would look forward to it all night long in bed, next to you.
I'm gonna buy a house, you know.
No, I didn't. Where?
Natalie.
So you're gonna stay, huh? And he would ring the doorbell. I felt like my heart would come out of my chest. He would smile, and we'd talk.
I want to make my garage into the guest house so my parents can visit. He says to me, because of the rules, I cannot do it.
Right, the zoning. And then you would come down the stairs. And I felt probably like someone who was terminally ill, and somehow they managed to forget it for a minute. And then it all comes back.
Hey, Tony.
Hey. Yeah? Hmm.
He talked to you all, poor you.
He made me feel like I mattered!
Balsamic vinegar, 35 years, from my sister's husband's family. Live in Modena.
They gave me some vinegar, but I don't think it was meant for me. It must have meant something that he felt bad.
Carmela, you sound like you're 15 years old.
I say I'm helping him decorate.
L'unico mezzo, siamo, è uccidere il marito.
Questo saccio.
E allora, un po' strunz.
I know she's my wife and the mother of my children and all, but let me tell you something. She can be a moody bitch.
They have everything.
I would love to go with you there.
Great, it's a date then.
Good. It's a date.
What the fuck you doing?
Tony! I had to park the car all the way over there.
Son of a bitch.
You make me feel like dancing. I wanna dance my life away.
You know, Quasimodo predicted all this.
Well, it's a small space, but I guess that makes it a decorating challenge. We should pick a light-colored ceramic tile, maybe.
All the houses back home have tile floors.
Well, then we should go to color tile, then.